Good evening, Auburn, Indiana, and car enthusiasts around the world. We are so excited today that you've decided to join us for the Auburn Court Duesenberg Parade today. It is an amazing event that happens in Auburn, Indiana every year except one last year. We did have to cancel the events, but oh my gosh, are we thrilled with the people that are showing up for today's Auburn Court Duesenberg Parade. Events have been happening since Thursday. We've been so excited to see people coming in, not only for our famous auction down at the auction grounds, but also just to celebrate these timeless classics that were built here in Auburn and Indiana and Indianapolis and every place in between. So we're so excited about that. A little history, the Auburn Court Duesenberg company itself was founded as the Auburn automobile industry way back in 1900. Making it this year, it would be over 121 years old. And actually, there are still things going on in that building today. Many of you know that's our Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum. Years ago, that building was bought and restored. And then in 2005, it was put on the national list of historic places. So we are thrilled that Auburn has tried to save a piece of that automobile history. Even though the automobile company was closed up and done by the 1940s, actually 1937 in that era, the legends live on. And today, if you stay with us through the parade, you are going to see some timeless classics. These cars have been dubbed the time machines on wheels, and I'm excited about that. See these pieces of art come down the street. These pieces of art, they grace every great car collectors club around the world. Even people like Jay Leno. Jay Leno is famous for owning several Duesenbergs and other expensive cars. But I'll tell you what, he's got some Duesenbergs that are unbelievable. But when you start thinking about that straight 8 engine that was built way back then with 265 plus horsepower, and many of them lots more than that, it is what the car enthusiasts wanted. They wanted that piece of automobile history that was just built like a classic. Little did our founders know, probably way back then, that we would still be celebrating what they're doing in their offices. Actually, Randy,
you're exactly right.
You go out there and you walk through, and you're able to sit at Auburn's executives' desks that they plan things. You see the molds, you see things that they use to create these timeless pieces of work. So we are thrilled about that today. A little bit of history about the museum itself. It is located in that famous administration building of the Auburn Automobile Company. It operated, there well into the 20th century till 1937, like we talked about earlier. There was also adjacent buildings that provided service, and there was a new parts building. Some of that now is occupied by other museums, such as the National Auto and Truck Museum. We're excited about that museum that's here. That particular museum, along with the Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum, were declared a National Historic Landmark, like I mentioned earlier, in 2005. And the parade today celebrates that. All of those classics came into that complex when they came back from the historic tour the other day, and then today they left for Eckhart Park, named after Charles Eckhart, one of our founders. And then they're going to start heading out and headed here to the parade route soon. It's amazing that, you think about the showroom in that administrative building that was designed all the way back. It was actually designed by architect Alvin Strauss. And, it's that Art Deco style. And, back in the 1930s, for a town in the Midwest in Indiana to have a building built in that Art Deco style that represented so much class was incredible. The automobile company, back then, it had been known for its carriages, and there was a carriage manufacturer, and at the height, when they were making carriages back there was almost 20 acres of carriage facilities back there, and that continued a long time. And there's cars that can be dated to those years rolling off those assembly lines that are still here in Auburn. And that's just simply really excited. If you ever choose to come to Auburn, you need to make sure you check out all of our fabulous museums. The Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum has several different galleries. When you come there, it's not only a look at our timeless machines, but it's also taking a look at the automobile history itself. on those original automobiles that were popping up around the turn of the century to those classic automobiles that continued to be built here and developed here. The other thing about our particular museum here, like a lot of museums, it's interactive. So you can come, and there are interactive kiosks all over the museum where you can come and you can interact with different things throughout the museum. You can see the internal workings of transmissions and engines. You can see how the frames were put together. You can see some things under restoration. If you're lucky enough to get over into the restoration complex, you can see the museum's team of experts working on different cars. So we would encourage all of you to get to Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum someday if you get a chance to, and take a look at that national landmark located here in Auburn, Indiana. I'm excited about today, Randy. Let me ask you this, Randy. The festival's underway here. I know the interns just went for a walk, and we got ice cream out of the deal.
Yes, we did. You sent them for a drink, and they brought us back ice cream.
Yeah, and that was awesome. I remember I got to find my water. They brought back sitting down there. But we're excited about the fact that we're able to. We're taking a look at something. We're trying to get our feed out there to you guys all if you want to join us.
The live feed will be available later.
It'll be on there all the time. I think you can get the feed from that website. I can't remember if they posted it this morning or not. But otherwise, you got to go to Auburn Essential Services. But I think it's posted both places.
All right. Had some visitors ask about the connection so they can share that with their families that's at home.
Yeah, we're excited about the fact that today we get to bring the parade to you. If you couldn't make it to Auburn this year, we're still going to be able to bring the parade to you. And that's exciting. We've got people we know tuning in all over the country. We had some car enthusiasts that I talked to this morning that have friends watching from Phoenix. I was actually having breakfast at the Town Tavern this morning, Randy, one of my favorite places to have breakfast anyway. And there was a group sitting there and said, yeah, they found out that it was going to be on, so they've been calling home, telling all their car buddies that couldn't make the trip. There was a guy there from Texas, as I mentioned, a guy there from Phoenix, and another guy's from Maryland. So we know we got people tuning in from different places around the United States. We're also hoping we got a few people tuning in from overseas. We know we got some very active members in the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Club that tune in from overseas to check things. So we'd like to welcome them to the parade also today. You can always reach out to us anytime you want for more information about how do you get to our programming, and contact us through the BTV student email drives, or you can contact myself, Jay Friels, or Randy Bice, and we can get a hold of you. We are located at DeKalbCentral.net, but we are thrilled that we can provide those types of opportunities for you to watch this amazing parade that's going to be with you today. The Auburns, the Cords, and the Duesenbergs. It's amazing when you think back. Okay, so you got three automobiles. You've got the Auburns, obviously our town here, the Auburns themselves, and then of course you got the Duesenbergs that were mainly manufactured in Indianapolis, but they did have a few things manufactured that we'll talk about later here in Auburn. And then of course the Cords, and the Cords were famous because E.O. Cord actually came here and tried to help the Auburn Automobile Company, get back on track, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. We are getting closer and closer. Kent Johnson, our MC today for the parade's out there, going to introduce some dignitaries.
We have a tradition that goes all the way back. Yeah, we wait until after the pre-parade.
And they're
there you go.
Heading it out. They got some festivities happening there that will happen later, I guess, after the pre-parade is coming in there. The parade started about 15 minutes ago, but it takes a little while. The cars are going to work their way out of Eckhart Park. They work their way downtown, and then they head up to about 3rd Street, make a big loop, and then, of course, they head down Main Street. Head down past where all the executives used to live 100 years ago, head past our courthouse here and the grandstands here where we're all located, and then they'll head on out to the museum. Once they get to the museum and the parade is over today, all of the cars return to the courthouse square today. And, of course, they'll be on display for the public to come around and look at. And it is an amazing opportunity to come see these classic cars all gathered here in Auburn. So if you are watching from home and you're watching the parade, you can come on down later today once the parade's over and take a look at these cars that are around the Auburn Courthouse Square. They've also been gathering other places. If you've been lucky enough to come on down to the old Auburn Hotel, last night probably 25 cars gathered there. This morning when I went to breakfast, probably still another 20 cars there. So it's exciting to see those cars gathering at the old Auburn Hotel just like they used to. You know, the Auburn themselves, you talk about all the different models, and when the Auburn Car Company closed in 1937, I don't think they thought that there would ever be other celebrations of Auburns coming through the streets of Auburn. But here we are again, and that's just super, super exciting. We're going to talk a lot about these individual cars, and we got history coming up. We already mentioned that the factory was founded in 1900, and of course it was a carriage factory back then. And the Eckhart brothers were making carriages, and they started to build those automobiles, and they built those automobiles up until their first closure in 1912. And in 1912, they started to get up in there, and they first started making them, and then all of a sudden some really great things happened. And in 1913 they built the first Indy 500 race car. Another one of those things that we are so famous for here. But when Frank and Morris took over back ownership in 1915, they were bound and determined to tell us that they were going to make a mark on the history. And in 1915, they didn't realize in 1937, of course, the Great Depression would come and go, and they would struggle through all of that and try to make ends meet and try to get these cars sold around the world. From 1915 to 1919, actually, the Auburn Company did pretty well. They were making Auburns. They were putting a couple of hundred out here and there. But then in 1919, they sold to some Chicago investors. And in that, then some things started to change. Those Chicago investors, of course, wanted returns on their money. So all of a sudden, they had to make sure the bottom line was going to get propped up, and that became very difficult, of course, because the Great Depression hit. Now, in spite of that, some great things started happening when they started to market that car around the world. Even drivers like Jimmy Murphy, who was a phenomenal race car driver, won the French Grand Prix with an Auburn back in 1921. So, they were bound and determined to get that out there. And as things started to rebound, that's when E.L. Cord came to town in 1926. And from then on, that next 11 years there were some glorious years for the Auburn Automobile Company. There was a lot of things struggled, but boy, they went on to win. In 27, they hit their third 500 victory. 1927, E.L. Cord purchased some new production facilities. The Duesenberg and the Auburn Speedster were created and debuted in 1928, and those two cars today, it is amazing. Back then you could place an order and for a few $100s, and then a few thousand later you could own a Duesenberg Model J or an Auburn Speedster. Now you can't touch those cars for several $100,000s down and several $100,000s to follow. Record, I believe I read yesterday, is still $1.4 million. So some great things happening, and we'll talk more about that. But after the Depression was over in 1931, that was the best year ever, okay? They sold almost 34,000 automobiles. And we stop and think about the big three right now. We talk about Chevy, and we talk about Ford, and we talk about Dodge, those great car companies. Back then, in 1931, 34,000 cars sold out of the Auburn automobile industry. They were a rival with all of those car companies. They came on with a 12-cylinder in 1932, which was unheard of. All of a sudden, more horsepower. And things continued to build and build, so big that they couldn't handle it here. They started moving some production down to Connersville, Indiana. They started making some all-steel construction. Got to remember that a lot of these classics, had steel chassis, but then they'd have a wood super frame maybe that carried their carriage,
right.
Which carried over from the carriage industry. But in 1934, they started going to the all-steel lines. And in 35, a year later, they started supercharging their cars. And all of a sudden, these speedsters were out there. 36, of course, the speedsters were coming on, and it wasn't long before Cord and Burig designed that famous Cord 1810. And when that happened, that put a stamp on the Cords, and all of a sudden the Auburns and the Duesenbergs and the Cords were just, man, it was like they were on fire. But then all of a sudden, 1936, 1937 rolled around, and they couldn't compete with those other manufacturers. People were coming out of that depression like we talked about earlier. They needed affordable cars, and the Auburn's, Cord, Duesenbergs were just out of reach, just high enough that the average person couldn't put that in there. And in 1937, then, of course, the automobile company filed for bankruptcy. And then there were some rights, Glenn Paray, out from Oklahoma in the 60s, bought the rights. And, there have been several attempts to make sure that the Auburn survived. Even in 67, the Auburn Automobile Company was put up for auction, but it didn't necessarily sell its things. And then, of course, back in the 70s, that North Shore showroom was finally opened in here, and then it was solidified that the Auburns would live on forever here in Auburn, Indiana. And, of course, then we'll talk about that later, but a lot of that was credited back to the Auburn Cord Duesenberg founders. And then those people here in Auburn, the guys like Dean Cruz, who just made a commitment to making sure people were aware of where the Auburns were built and what happened back then. Got a nice wagon rolling down the street there. You talk about modern transportation. Then it's a radial flyer there, but got some good things happening.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, leading the pre-parade is the Auburn Police. I want to thank them for everything.
Got our Auburn Police Department coming down here. They have been busy. I tried to get to breakfast this morning, and of course, Randy, I couldn't take my normal route because there were so many people in town.
Brings a lot of visitors to Auburn, that's for certain.
Got our American Legion coming down, presenting our colors. As always, so thankful that we have the right to gather here in America. Those freedoms that we take for granted sometimes, the American Legion riders are reminding us that, we are gathered today because our forefathers wanted us to be able to have the right to gather. Awesome as the parade keeps kicking off here and headed our way.
It's the pride of DeKalb High School. It's the Baron Brigade.
The Baron Brigade marching down here, and they are coming down live. Really, really proud of this group of young people. Holy smokes, do they work hard. Over 100 members strong. They are marching every single day. I do think she gives them Sunday and a bit of Monday off, Randy.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you what, if it's not the flag corps working, it's the ensembles working. If the ensembles aren't working, then oh my gosh, it's the drum corps or the majorettes. I mean, they're just an amazing group of young people. There they are, Sweet Caroline coming by from the grandstand there. It's exciting to see the DeKalb Baron Brigade kicking off our parade today. Again, I think one of the blessings that, our Auburn founders would have been really great to see today is all the people gathered here and the community support, not only for these cars, but for people in general. Auburn is just a phenomenal place to raise a family and grow people and grow relationships. And I guess that's one of the greatest things that has come out of this amazing automobile history is the sustainability of all these things. Our Grand Marshal is going to be coming through here in just a second, Lynn St. James, riding through here in the streets of one of our timeless classics.
In this beautiful car, driven by Miss Carrie Ackerman.
Carrie Ackerman driving the car today.
Live in this community, you see this car quite a bit.
Bringing Lynn St. James through.
St. James, it's great to have you here today. Indianapolis 500 legend.
If you never got a chance to see her on the racetrack, that's probably the slowest I've ever seen her go in an automobile, Randy, right there.
You're exactly right.
But she is our Grand Marshal, Miss St. James. She'll get out and join us for the Dignitary Associations today. Fantastic to have her as a grand marshal. And I like one of the things that Mr. Johnson said right there. You do see that car around town, driven by Miss Ackerman right there. But a lot of our Auburn people here, they like to get their cars out and drive them. And that is amazing to be here in town and to be part of that rich history. Like myself, Randy, you're a car enthusiast. We both happen to have Mustangs. That we're kind of a classic Mustang guys. We believe you got to have a lot of horses in the barn. But one of the things I was dedicated to, and I got inspired when I moved to Auburn, was I was going to drive my Mustang.
This was the car that was used to pose for the poster this year. Women behind the wheel.
Every year, the Auburn Cord Duesenberg gets a poster, and if you haven't seen this year's poster, it's amazing. This was the car that was part of this year's poster campaign to kick off the 2021, the Roaring Twenties theme.
To get your festival poster just down.
Awesome to see these cars rolling through.
The Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival tent. You can get one of your posters there.
You'll start to see more of these Auburns as they come through today, and we'll try to give you as much information as we can. And by no means are Randy and I authorities on automobiles, but we'll tell you what we know.
Abby Russell, Miss ACD Festival 2021.
Always trying to involve our young people. We have crowned Abby Russell. She is the new 2021 Miss Auburn Cord Duesenberg, riding through in what is not a classic car, Randy. I guess it could be a classic car someday. Nice convertible there. You never know.
We'll get a chance then to compete for Miss
Indiana, she will get to compete for Miss Indiana there, which is kind of cool because she is the Miss Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival person.
We want to say a big thank you for. This guy had put in years and years of hard work to make the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival wonderful. This year, he's been named Friend of the Festival. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Greg Schlosser.
There is no doubt that Greg Schlosser has been intricately involved.
He's normally the one to make sure all the downtown.
Once you buy one of these classics, there's just no way you don't get sucked into helping and making sure that they continue to live on. And Mr. Schlosser and his entire entourage has been extremely supportive of all the things that get done here.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we come. This is Miss Amanda Pete. She's the one that draws these posters every year. She's our artist.
So you know that the poster for years was done by the same person, and then this year Amanda Pete has taken over the drawings of that. She is the artist that is doing that. She's another one of our dignitaries that have arrived now, and again, one of those classic Auburn automobiles roaring onto the scene here.
In 1922 Duesenberg, it's Barbara Burig, Orlando. This is the daughter of Gordon.
So Gordon Burig was that amazing designer. Here you go, his daughter and granddaughter coming in here in a 1922 Duesenberg. Boy, you take a look at her lines and you take a look at the simplicity of the day, but also the elegance of the day. And just an amazing automobile there, and we're glad to have her with us today. Our state senator, Dennis Cruz, coming in today.
What a beautiful Impala coming in, and it's our state senator, Mr. Dennis Cruz. Dennis, thanks for being here today.
Dennis has been part of the state legislature for so many years, and now has finally decided to not run. So it'll be an open seat for Dennis this coming up year. But we would like to thank Dennis for all of his years of service at the State House, making sure that the people of Auburn, Indiana were represented and making sure that our voices were heard. So many kudos to Dennis Cruz. Also for what Dennis has done for the festival over the years. You know, as a state senator, you have to be supportive of your hometown, and he definitely has done everything he can to control that, along with, you know, our state representative Ben Smaltz, who's following up next in this next vehicle. He's our House of Representatives rep, and you know, to have that voice down in Indianapolis is huge. Ben, also a business owner here, also supporting the county and country and the Auburn town as much as he can always. So I want to thank Ben for all of he's done over the years.
We want to thank Vincent Pietricatello for driving the car today.
You know, back in the day in 1919 when the Auburn was sold off of the company itself to Chicago investors. It's great to know that here we are still living that dream a little bit. Mike Lay showing up, the mayor of Auburn. Mike, a businessman here, and then decided he needed to do more for the community and ran for mayor, and all of a sudden has really worked hard to continue to make sure that Auburn can provide all of the amenities that people need, but also continue to grow us as a community from top to bottom. No matter where you live, no matter what your age, Mike's vision is to make sure that you feel like you're part of the community and part of the great heritage that we have here in Auburn.
Jeeps for being a part of today's pre-parade.
Jeep Invasion on Saturday night. Think about Auburn today that, we're focused on 3 cars, but oh my gosh, this weekend the Fords are having a great big thing out at our Ford Museum. The Jeeps are invading. A few weeks ago, there were different car clubs involved at different levels. It's becoming a mega spot. When we have a cruise in on a Thursday night, I don't know about you, Randy, but I used to come down at 6:45 with my Mustang and be able to get a spot at 7 o'clock on the square.
Right.
Now, if you don't leave at 5 o'clock, you're not going to get a spot on First Street. There'll be 12 blocks of cars here.
Well, I got a good friend that brings his down in the afternoon.
Yeah, well, you see that more and more. People come down and start parking around the square at 1, 2 o'clock just so they got a spot.
Yeah.
Here we are with some monster trucks.
Big shout out to these guys. Jeff Cook, who has been a phenomenal supporter of the monster truck industry. We've also now have the Monster Truck Hall of Fame located in Northern Indiana, which is just phenomenal. Daisy Cook driving there, of course, one of the Cook kids, and mom blowing kisses from the back, women's power right there. That's just awesome. But it's good to see Jeff Cook up there and making sure that they've got that represented.
Is driving the Future Liner.
And I'll tell you what, now this is an amazing piece of heritage right here.
Yes, it is.
For the World's Fair and the Parade of Progress.
So, the Future Liner was developed as that particular piece of equipment that could transport people in rare luxury. It was designed for the World's Fair. This particular Future Liner was found and then brought to Auburn and restored. And just the whole fact that it is a piece of classic heritage, as she rolls down the grandstand. She's on display at Natmas. If you come to town, you can always get out to Natmas and take a look at that Future Liner.
So the great race happens every year. All these cars are able to enter and go.
We talked about a variety of museums. The early Ford Foundation has a museum out town, and of course here you got Craig Floyd's early Great Race 103. That's a great coast-to-coast race that happened depending on where it's at. But you can stop by the Ford Museum and check out those particular cars out there if you want. Auburn touches a lot of different surrounding communities, Fort Wayne, only 20 minutes to the south of us. Here we have Miss Fort Wayne, Lindsey Brown, and Miss Outstanding Team, Ariana Patrico. I think, that's another testament to what the parade involves for so many people. Even our surrounding community comes and takes part. We have people here from all over the world. But, there we got Mrs. Fort Wayne. Miss Northeast Outstanding Team coming up. Caitlin Joseph. Sam Robbins, who is Miss Northwest.
Hello, ladies. And they'll be competing at the Miss Indiana.
A lot of these kids moving on, and just amazing. Hey, you talk about being able to transcend lots of things. Leslie Peel, the director there, you can see the poster on the back of the car that the boys had a little bit ago. But we also had Icy coming through there. It was really good to see Icy from the Fort Wayne Comets making his move around the parade and reminding everybody that, hey, our professional sports team, the Comets. Gotta love him. Riding through. All kinds of dignitaries showing up in Auburn, including Icy. Now, I'm wondering if Icy will get off and join the dignitaries there. I think a good picture of him and Mr. Cruz and Mike Lada together would be awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, there's all different kinds of parts of the car industry.
This is the company to go to.
Praxis Detailing. Not just anybody puts a rag on a Duesenberg, which is worth over $1 million and waxes it down. Another great part of the industry that is developed in Auburn are all these side businesses to take care of these cars.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's the interior or the motor work or whether it's the detailing and restoration. A lot of specialty people live here in Auburn, Indiana, which is really, really cool.
In Indiana, and the sea, I can see the gleaming candle still burning bright through the sycamores for me. The new moon haze sends all its fragrance.
The grandson of E.L. Cord coming through, William Cord Hummel, in a really nice Cord.
Oh, when I dream about the moonlight on the wall.
These Cords that are rolling through here were really famous cars. There, Keith Oleski coming through also. He's the secretary for the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Club. You know, the Cord was branded name. It was really America's really first luxury car, and it was manufactured here in Auburn from 29 to 32, and then again in 36 to 37. The Cord Corporation was founded, of course, by E.L. Cord. That was the holding company for his transportation and his interest. The Cord was noted for its innovative technology and its streamlined designs. Here's board member Joe Leahy, another member of the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum. He is a board member for us. You know, the Cord made a lot of different models. They made the 1810, they made the 1812. And these Cords were just considered classics. Another board member here, Lindsey Green Barrett. The Cord itself, you know, there were a lot of different rivals, you know. One of the things it was famous for back then, though, was its front-wheel drive. Okay, the L29 came out, and it had a front-wheel drive drivetrain. The other thing, it had hidden headlamps originally on the L29. And that 1810 and the 1812 were just amazing cars. Now, there were other cars back then that had hidden headlights, too, like the DeSoto's 1942, but the Cords just did it phenomenally well.
Let's have a big smile. There he is. Look at this. He can drive around getting his hands on the wheel. This is Tom Lee from Philadelphia. Beautiful 1912 Auburn.
That was a 1912 Auburn coming through, being driven by Tom Lee, and he was dressed up and everything.
That is a real sports car in this day.
It says on here, Jerry.
We are really featuring this year women behind the wheel. And we got a beautiful woman behind the wheel of this Auburn, and it's one of those beautiful cars here. Thanks a lot, ladies, for bringing it.
A lot of people bringing their Auburn through here to kick us off at the beginning.
Here is something that was called the Beauty 6. This was built by the original.
The Beauty 6 was originally made as an affordable car.
In 1925, E.L. Cord came to
This is a
eventually took over the Auburn Automobile Company.
car that when was brought in, the Beauty 6, great commercials made for that car to make sure that it was affordable for people. And it was that attempt to get that out there and make sure that they could. The history of the Beauty 6 goes way back, you know, but you could buy those for $1,000, you know, and when Cord came through, he was bound and determined to make sure everybody could afford one of those.
Take this car out and race it. This is a car that would go close to 100 miles an hour in the 1920s. Beautiful car.
Charles and Mary Meyer from Wisconsin.
Now the car in front of you is a red Speedster. Now we have the Myers car, which is a convertible coupe. The difference is this has a back seat in it. You notice the rumble.
Car is owned by the Myers. They've got a rumble seat in the back. Beautiful car coming through here in Auburn's parade today. Another Auburn come through. James and Thomas Smith coming through and trying to get it done out there. They got their camper on the back. They've got that original Auburn coming down through there. And
see this car from Auburn.
Amazing one. Of course, John Martin Smith, so instrumental in doing so much for our community. One of the cars from his great collection, you know, and he was instilling the legacy there.
This is a car that was really redesigned in 1925-26 after Mr. Cord took over.
A 1925 Auburn there, coming through.
Cord said that'll make the car look faster, so they put this into the body style.
We really need to look at these next 5 cars. They're some of the rarest cars in existence, all owned by Corvette. Barbara's driving the first car with her co-pilot, Mark Ivan.
Got some great cars coming in here now.
Salon models. Notice on the corners of the
You can see the boats still. These are considered a salon model car here in front of us.
This is a top of the line extra option.
Got some beautiful dual tandem cars coming up through. What a collection in front of us.
These are all from the same collection. These are collections from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Beautiful.
This collection is out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. An amazing display of
Victoria coupe.
Auburns.
They offered 5 different body styles, and Bill, after years, was able to collect one of each body style.
So that particular Victorian coupe, the way we understand it, they made 5 different body styles of it. And this particular collector out of Kalamazoo, musician we just heard, is able to collect one of every single body style. Got another camper coming through.
George Smith, former president of the Auburn Court-Duesenberg Club.
George Smith. He was a former president of the Auburn Court-Duesenberg Club, and he's bringing his family through with their Mullins camper behind it.
You don't want to stand in front of that car when George pulls the horn.
Auburn Indian Rosenthal.
The Rosenthals bringing through their Auburn today with a nice rumble seat in the back of it.
Beautifully. It looks great. Thank you.
Car number 48, Jack and Lucy Laughlin from Fort Wayne.
This car right here doesn't have to travel far. They came up from Fort Wayne, but a beautiful Auburn coming through. Got the Metro Cab coming through on the Auburn Chases. Okay.
This next car, Craig and Nancy Bassett. Craig, yeah, there he is.
Craig Bassett from Bassett family there. They've had that cab for a long time, display on at the museum, several places, but the Bassett family rolling through there in their yellow taxi cab.
That's why we have taxis here, like they sold back in the 1930s.
Sean Miller from Indianapolis, 35 Cabriolet.
Nice
Look at the top on this.
1935 Cabriolet there, came up from Indianapolis, a supercharged.
David and Sharon Kettle from Fort Wayne. Hello.
Another Fort Wayne car coming through with their grandchildren in the back there.
Which was a car that I think could be sold for $695.
This car coming through right now just went through.
Edwin and Donald Phillips from Lowell, Indiana.
Got one from Lowell. Got our little doggy peeking out the window there. It was kind of cool.
Notice the hood is longer on this car. This is also a very, very original car. But yeah, look at the back seat here, and it's got a chauffeur. I hope you're saving some chocolate chip cookies for me later today. You got them good.
So many people gather here to take a look at these timeless machines today.
This is a 32 Auburn convertible sedan.
1932 Auburn rolling through the blue car with yellow wheels. What an amazing piece of work.
Two-door car with the top that goes down.
Got a 4-door car, but you know it was a convertible too. You could take the top down. And
Simmons, Indiana, 31 Florida.
This company built 3 types of cars. They built the Auburns, which were the entry-level cars, and then the Cords, which were the higher priced, and then the Duesenbergs, which were super priced. We're going to see all of those today.
Cameron Peterson from Wartell. I have this right now. Cameron, how are you?
the Patels bringing their car through.
Sorry, yeah. This family has several ACD cars. Good to see you guys today. Great. Beautiful chrome. That's very rare with the flying quarters. Okay, well, everyone's jumping
John
on.
Rivera Riza from Bristol, Indiana.
Another beautiful 6-cylinder Auburn.
This car here is, this car here is owned right now by Crown Fowler family, formerly owned by the former president of the museum, Great Crown Fowler.
Another beautiful Auburn coming through.
Auburn. been customized quite a bit. They dropped her down on the frame. Yep, big 12-cylinder under that.
A lot of people will take these Auburns, and if they're in bad shape and you can't find a repair, they'll do a restoration job like that, drop them down, try to fix them up the best of their ability and make them look awesome like that.
I would say 30, 40 years this car has been a fixture here in Auburn.
Another.
Yes, I noticed many people who live in Auburn own these automobiles, and you can regularly see these cars being driven around town.
They just keep coming through. Some amazing Auburns. You know, the models, you know, when you think about the first touring car that was built back in 1904, you could seat 2 or 4 passengers, and they sold for around $1,000. Well, now you're not going to touch one for $1,000.
Look at the Hickory, North Carolina. Look at the gorgeous colors on this.
Beautiful car from North Carolina coming through.
It's absolutely breathtaking. Big 12-cylinder, 391 cubic inch motor. 8-cylinder convertible or sedan.
Got a Cord coming through next.
We have the Butler family, which are real fixtures about DeKalb County. They own several cars. Look at this Butler, a supercharged Auburn Motel.
Oh yeah, that was not. I saw the fenders in the front of that, and I went Cord, but that's one of those supercharged Auburns. Yeah. Another secretary for the club coming through.
That's one of our features.
We love what's happening here today. We are going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more parade action in just a second. Thanks for joining us today here at the Auburn Cord-Duesenberg Parade. And we'll be back with more cars and more action.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, we're back here at the Auburn Cord-Duesenberg Parade. This car coming up here next, amazing. They're even dressed the part. Got people riding in the back, looking really, really good. Another phenomenal Auburn coming through.
This is a 1931, 32 Auburn.
That was a 31 Auburn convertible.
The only thing is you want to keep your mouth closed when you're going down the road at 50 miles an hour.
Got an open. One of my favorites, Dr. Greg Butler and his entourage right there. Got to love him. Go way back with that beautiful Auburn that runs in their family. Love the way they're dressed up and looking the part. I guess that's what dentists do, you know. They keep their family heritage going, you know. But really appreciate Greg's dedication to keeping the Auburn motormobile alive. I guess is what I wanted to say right there. More Butlers coming through there. Grandma Butler with a grandchild inside there. I do like the fact that we've said several times, though, you see these cars other times. The people that live in Auburn get their cars out and drive them. So it is fun to be able to take a look at those and see that heritage carry on.
You know, the Butlers can actually hold their own car show right at their own home with all of these Auburn's.
More of the Butlers coming through in their last group right there, making sure they've got those through.
Listen to that motor, folks. You see it says supercharged on the hood. You hear that whistling? That's the supercharger. That gives it about 25% more horsepower. Yeah, that's not the bearing in the alternator. That is a supercharger.
Another Auburn Sportster coming through there. You know, in 34, when Berg was transferred to Auburn, that's when he designed that 1935 Auburn, the 851 Speedster. And that 851 Speedster was styled over leftover body parts. And the leftover body parts then were used to make sure that it got out there. They also made what was called a baby Duesenberg out there for a little while. Great car that just came through here that was under restoration. They're working hard to get that back up. You can see the different stages on it. You know, back in when that baby Duesenberg was born, that smaller one, it was supposed to be a more affordable car. Well, it's not more affordable today. You know, it's going to cost you. But if you'd have bought them back then, it would have been amazing. in 33, you know, it was amazing that they were producing that. And then right before the company closed in 36, 37, those 810s and 812s, the Cords especially, were going out the door here in Auburn. And just stamped the fact that there was luxury cars being made right here in Auburn, Indiana.
Following right behind it.
Car number 127.
We saw several of those speedsters go by. You know, those were powered by a straight 8 back then. And, you know, they would develop, you know, that 4.6 that was in those cars right now, you know, 150 horsepower. And, you know, they travel 100 miles an hour back in the day. And that's why they were showing up on racetracks in different places. That's why Bonnie and Clyde wanted to drive one. You know, it's because they were a car that had some power under the hood. Another great-looking Auburn coming through.
No, this is Jill. This is Jill herself. This is her husband. But this car has on the rear bumper it says student driver. I think she passed her test.
So I was behind Jill today when I left breakfast, headed for the park, and she was learning how to run that stick, I think, you know, because they wanted another woman behind the wheel, which was fantastic to see all these females. This is the empowerment year of the women to be driving their Cords and Auburns and Duesenbergs through the fair today.
At least, I think every state in the union and probably 20 different countries. You don't have to own one of these cars to be a member.
You know, talking a little bit about as these cars continue to roll, the fact that the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum and the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Club has a member in every single state in the United States and over 20 different countries, which, you know, you stop and think about that, that is really canvassing the world. And for a club that originated here with these classics, to have that kind of representation also says something about the quality of these amazing cars that are going by us. You're looking at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway cars right here. These are the types of cars that would be down there on the track to win. That's boat tail that went through earlier.
Carol, you're doing great. Congratulations. Just don't burn any rubber when you're pulling out. Okay, come on.
Another supercharger coming through. You can always hear those superchargers. And, you know, we think about, you know, I got a truck that's got a turbocharger under the hood because I need it to pull tractors around on trailers. But here we're talking 100 years ago, they were putting supercharged engines underneath the hood just to gain horsepower.
Yeah.
You only get to maybe see one of them, and I think we've got at least 10 of them here. Look at this gorgeous boat tail.
I think if we went back to Charles Eckert, you know, when he developed the carriage company back in 1840s and 1850s and 60s and 70s, I don't think he would have ever dreamed that his sons, Frank and Morris, would take it to that next level, and we'd be celebrating what they did today.
This is an absolutely spectacular car, supercharged Auburn with a French body. Only one ever built. Jason Schnack, thanks Jason for bringing it. Great car.
Vincent Barber, Kentucky Tala from Auburn, Indiana, formerly from State Line.
Another Auburn car here. Beautiful yellow Auburn.
Vincent Brunson Barr decided that the wonders of Auburn are impossible to resist.
That's a local car. Another great story about these Auburn cars come here, and sometimes their owners end up settling here too. And so you see these cars on the streets and traveling around.
Here's an unrestored original. Take a look.
Gotta love that unrestored original that just rolled by.
Also, we like to bring cars that are out that are under restoration.
This next car, Joe and Mike Huffman.
There's probably one of my favorite ones right there, the boat tail.
I love those boat tails, you know, and it's been imitated by so many, but those supercharged boat tails were just an amazing, you think about when they went to do that, it was just incredible, and Cord was just bound and determined to make that Auburn boat-tailed Speedster, you know, the popular car. He wanted people to want him, 150 horsepower, you know, and all of a sudden, the Roaring 20s, you know, had burst, and the people in Hollywood couldn't get enough of them. Everybody wanted an Auburn boat-tail Speedster.
Yeah.
The problem was that everybody was the 200 that people in Hollywood that could afford them at the time.
Right.
So, you know, and unfortunately, then the Depression hit, you know, and then, of course, a couple of miscalculations and financial things, maybe way back then. They ended the company in 1937, but here we are, still celebrating them today. A 1931 Auburn rolling by us here.
We got another beautiful big Auburn boat tail. Thanks, guys, for bringing a beautiful car.
car number 1, Jay and Deborah Larson, Michigan.
Got a Michigan car rolling by here. Car number 1, owned by the Larsons out of Michigan.
Both the spare tires and the fenders, or the spare tire on the back. The spare tires and the fenders were an accessory, and you paid a little extra.
There you go, another Auburn following up.
And I believe the spares on the outside and the other side. One spare.
Dave Yard from Garrett, Indiana.
Beautiful Auburn guys.
Garrett car winning by. They didn't have to travel far. You know, if you don't settle in Auburn with an Auburn, you settle close by. Now, this is one of my favorites coming up. I love this 113 car. This Supercharge is just an amazing Auburn.
Which really help get cars on, tires off and on if you have a flat.
Walter Engelman, Supercharged Fate. Mark and Angie Higgins from Ohio.
Another beautiful big sedan.
The Hagens have brought their
Very original color.
Auburn sedan over.
Looks like it's a very original car.
You know, they talk about the original colors. Originally, they did that, and then there was that moment where Cord said, hey, we're just going to repaint everything. And they repainted them a brighter color and something. All of a sudden, we're able to sell them.
Who was the head of design at the Auburn Auto Company. This was his last design. This was a one-year only model, and then Gordon Beard, the great famous Gordon Beard, designed the 35 and 36 Auburn's.
David and Angie Hall from Indianapolis.
An Indianapolis car coming through here. Got some beautiful white walls on there. Spare tire on the back. That was an accessory back in the day. You didn't have to buy a spare tire. You know, if you weren't going to travel far, you didn't even have to buy one. I think that was, you know, when Cord started aggressively marketing the company's unsold inventory, that's when the company had that revival. You know, Cord decided to take that inventory, rebrand it, repaint it, resell it, and in 1924, 1925, when that was all happening, he was starting to make that happen. You know, of course, then the stock market crashed in 1929 and kind of pushed it into a halt. You'll see the air horns on the front of that Auburn right there, and those air horns were not standard. That was an accessory you could buy. A lot of guys will find these Auburns now and then take a look at what accessories they might have been able to buy for their Auburn, and go ahead and buy those accessories now and add them to them. You know,
Yeah,
still an accessory all these years later. We had a big swap meet this morning where guys were trading parts that would have been on all of these classic cars.
Okay. All right. Very good to see you today. Very original car.
Jeff and Julie Hartman from Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin car just rolled by. Beautiful yellow lines with that brown soft top on it.
Stainless steel around the members, but it's got a lot of paint.
Another group coming through enjoying that rumble seat.
Beautiful colors. I love it. It looks great, guys.
You know, it wasn't uncommon back then, too. Auburn was working really hard to make, but there were coach manufacturers then that built the coaches for so many of these. And the automobile companies, you know, they would build the hard part inside. But what Auburn had going for it was they had a coach building company, you know. That's what was happening in those metal bodies that were starting to build back there, including the Auburns, you know, under the junction of those bodies, you know, they were able to produce all different kinds of cars.
The Auburn Automobile Company sold automobiles all around the world.
In 1937, you know, all three cars ended their production here in Auburn. But again, we're seeing today during this parade, the classic cars continue to roll by, just like they would have 100 years ago.
161A, all the way from, well, this car came from Colorado.
Beautiful car from Colorado, green trimmed in yellow. Got that travel luggage on the back that matches that car right there, coming by with almost 165 horsepower. A Euclid, Ohio car. It's a nice soft top coming through.
Frank has had many top show cars here over the years.
Gary and Cheryl Howe from Mason, Michigan.
Mason and Michigan, the Howells bringing their Auburn down today for Auburn's Parade. A beautiful silver gray car right there, trimmed in burgundy and maroon. You know, in Auburn, when they started in 1904, they made that touring car model, and they made beautiful cars just like that one. Those cars could seat from 2 to 4 passengers. They sold for like $1,000. In today's money, that would be around $28,000. Still not a bad deal for a car back then,
Right.
but expensive. You know, we talked earlier how the average person couldn't necessarily afford to jump into, you know, that particular car back there, even though like a 1904 was, you know, fairly well priced, but at $1,000, that was a lot of money for people. The other thing I found interesting about those older 1904s, you know, they only produced about 10 horsepower. It wasn't that they were going to be a hot rod car, you know. They only weighed about 1,500 pounds. They had half elliptical springs on them. They were 2-speed planetary transmissions. I mean, there was nothing really fancy about them at the time, but they got the job done and they were dependable. But then it was when, you know, 1926, when Cord became the owner and partnered with Duesenberg Corporation, started pushing that car line up into the racing forums, made sure they were going to produce a car like the Duesenberg Model J, which we'll get to see a little later. Beautiful red Speedster coming through here, supercharged.
In the 1970s and 80s, Glen Parade built a lot of those bodies.
Now that body right there that came by, as great as it was a Glen Parade body, and you can read more about that and find more about those people that have tried to restore and replicate the Auburns over the years also.
Beautiful, beautiful colors on this one. It's beautiful. Oh man, I like this Speedster, Ken.
Beautiful, beautiful unrestored Speedster. Gotta love it. These cars are coming through here in some original glory and some original paint, original stuff on them. You know, right there you're looking at a piece that's 100 years old and still drivable today on the streets in Auburn. In many ways, I like that just as well as I like some of them that are just been done so well.
Okay, we got another 12-cylinder 1932.
There's a 1932 12-cylinder, beautiful green car coming through.
Yep, these are Auburn residents with another.
We see that car around Auburn occasionally. They live right here.
Anyways, it's a beautiful car. It's an Auburn supercharged convertible coupe.
Supercharged Auburn convertible coupe with a rumble seat folded back. This car, if you take a close look at the front end right there, was the very first front-wheel drive car ever built. You can see the transmission up there. You can see the planetary gears.
This is an Auburn sedan.
It was an Auburn sedan, but it was a front-wheel drive, and they took that stab at, you know, okay, is that a better way? And then, of course, you think about that today. We have lots of cars that are front-wheel drive, but back then they were also toying with the front-wheel drive out there.
You get the height of the car down a foot. They're a foot lower than anything else. And look at how beautiful the one.
Without putting that drive shaft clear to the black wheels, you know, you could take the suspension, you could tighten everything up, you could lower these cars. They were easier to get in and out of, easier to travel down the road. Beautiful Cord coming by in front of us.
Beautiful 810 coming through here. One of the best ones of the show, but it's a little out of place. So we're doing L29.
We got another kid car. He has two L29s and he does fabulous work on
These cars were built till 1932. The ravages of the Depression stopped the production on these front-wheel drive Cords. But Cord in 1936 reintroduced the
These front-wheel drive Cords, and I stand corrected on that. Yeah, I've seen so many cars that go down, but you can just see that planetary, you know, transmission differential out there in front.
I don't honestly think a lot of these cars were taxis. It's pretty neat. I really like
Got a taxi out there right now, 20 cents for the first quarter mile, 5 cents for each additional mile. Randy, that's cheaper than paying your insurance and owning a car right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right on that.
Yeah, these are all regular cars. That's it. All right.
These Cords, the L29s, you know, were the first American front-wheel drive cars offered to the public. Of course, the Ruxton came out several months later in 1921. This particular Cord, the front-wheel drive part of it was the brainchild of the Miller Engineering Company in Cornelius Van Rust. And that front drive system, it was actually borrowed, or I should say patented after some of the Indianapolis race cars that were dominating the circuit in the 500s. So they used the same Dion layout and these inboard brakes, and they started to build them. And they built these cars in Auburn. Cord was the first one to do it, and it was their first used on the 1929 Cords. You're seeing them coming through here right now. You know, the lack of that rear drivetrain, as we talked about, you know, just a little bit ago, and those components, you know, allowed this car to be lower. And with that happening, you know, both these cars then, you know, their average height could be 6 feet, you know, and they didn't stick up in the air as much. So you could get it into places you couldn't get other cars. They were sleeker. People liked them. But they were just incredible. And obviously, you know, the special bodies that were built in the Cord chassis, they were built by those American and European coach builders. They started winning prizes all around the world. And this L29, it also came full of instrumentation, you know, that in the day was unheard of. Things like temperature gauges and oil pressure gauges and speedometers on the left. And they actually had gas gauges so you knew when you were going to run out. They had gauges for your amp meters, for your battery indications, and your oil levels. It wasn't just the great hidden headlights that you see on these cars. It wasn't just the great fenders. It was everything else that they tried to push this car up into being an upper echelon car, a luxury car. You know, and having all those gauges right at the driver's eyesight, you know, right there to the right of the steering wheel, made it an amazing car. You know, the L29, interesting fact, it was powered by Auburn's 5,000 cc engine. It was 125 horsepower. It was an L-head 120, and the crankshaft, you know, it would push out the front of the block, and then the flywheel could be mounted up front. Of course, it was a front-wheel drive. So you think about that. We got the engine sitting there. They pushed the crankshaft out the front of the engine, and then it could be right there where you need it. So the gearing in both the transmission and the front axles, you know, was all right there. What they did find back then, though, man, you put 5,000 pounds of torque, you know, in a car that was like that, man, you had to have some power. So it did limit its speed to about 80 miles an hour. Now, in the racing world, that limited speed was something that they weren't hoping for. But that limited speed did knock it down as far as being able to get out there and compete. It was priced back then around $3,000, those 29s were. If I would put that into 2021 dollars, that's somewhere around that $50,000 mark. You think about spending $3,000 on a car back then, well, that'd be like spending around $50,000 on a car right now if you wanted to buy one of these L29s. Of course, you couldn't touch one of these L29s right now for $50,000. Hey, we got an almost married there coming through. We're going to give them the best of luck and hope they make it. They only got 5 cans left. Hey, here's something I love to see. We got one being restored. She's not ready to drive herself through, but they're driving her through anyway. Got her on the trailer. You can see that. Now, when you bought that car new, it didn't come with the truck and trailer, but you had to just buy the car.
Okay, all the way from Oklahoma.
Just heard some of the announcers saying some of these cars are coming to us from Oakland, Oklahoma, and all over.
Okay, we got the fabulous Duesenbergs coming. This was the top of the line car.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to switch lines now, man. We are seeing the Duesenbergs roll through here, these $1 million car.
This is a Murphy body.
These were amazing cars, 250 horsepower plus. A lot of these cars that you're going to see come through here now are actually owned by the museum. So if you stop here in Auburn, you can come out and see them. These Duesenbergs started out with a straight 8 engine. It was produced from 1921 to 1937. It was sold in the automobiles. That was called the straight 8.
And his most inexpensive J, which was $12,500. Okay.
It's amazing. These cars back then, you know, the production of these cars was just amazing. They raced.
This car is one. It was built for a man named Castle and Cook.
Talking about a couple of these Duesenbergs right here that actually raced in the Indianapolis 500.
First car ever built, car built by Duesenberg. It was gifted by the Castle family last year to the Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum, and we are thrilled to have it. Brandon, thanks for coming out.
Talking about Brandon Castle bringing the
All right.
Duesenberg into town there. We're really thrilled that they showed up.
This is the first Duesenberg. The first one was a black.
You've heard the term, it was a doozy, you know. Okay, well, that's where it comes from, right here. When people would see that Auburn coming through and they'd say, hey, I think that was a doozy. That's exactly what they were talking about. It was founded, the Duesenberg Company itself, by brothers August and Frederick Duesenberg back in 1913. And the Duesenberg Company was actually not founded here in Auburn. It was founded in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then they were built there, and their engines and racing cars. And then the brothers, they ended up moving to New Jersey eventually to produce things. Their main manufacturing was engines for World War I. And that's what they focused on, was building these Duesenberg engines for World War I. And they were trying to fill government contracts. And then their contracts were canceled. And because their contracts were canceled, they moved to Indianapolis. And once they got to Indianapolis, that was their new home. And, of course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway right there. And then established the Duesenberg Automobile Company. And then in 1926, E.O. Cord, up here in Auburn, added the Duesenberg to his Auburn Automobile Company. So that's how those Duesenbergs make the full circle and end up here in Auburn. Just these phenomenal, fantastic cars. They had several models. They had the Model A. That was 1921 to 1927. They had the Model X, 1926 to 1927. Then they followed that up with the Model J, of course, which was 1928 to 1937.
John, how many times you going to go through here?
A 1929 coming through there.
He'll figure it out. Hang on. John Bowles, he'll do it.
Well, now we got a Cord coming back through here again. We saw those Duesenbergs coming through.
Boy, I didn't miss a few.
Jack Boyd and Laura Smith from Elkhart.
This is
Got a car.
very special Cord. This was owned originally by Amelia Earhart.
So that was Amelia's Earhart just coming through here, her Cord. It's now located in Elkhart, Indiana. You'll notice now some of our cars are starting to turn off, and they're settling in right here in the Courthouse Square for today's festivities and activities. We'll show you how that's going to work as they continue to roll in.
This company went out of business. They sold parts here in Auburn at where the museum is today. And ultimately,
Another beautiful Cord coming through. This is a two-seater here. You got the double windshield bringing that car by. Another Cord following it up.
It was built by him, a replica car built in the 1980s.
Some of these Cords you're seeing coming through right now, a couple of replicas. Again, a lot of these cars, especially the Cords and the Botel Speedster, have been replicated. Different people, like we mentioned earlier, Glenn Paray, have tried to reduce them. And it was actually the rebirth of that Speedster a few years ago. It's just you can't, you just look at the sleek lines on these cards. You know, you go back to the Cord, that 1810 and that 812, which are probably the best known Cords. Of course, they were styled by Gordon Brewing, and, you know, that front wheel drive that we talked about earlier. You know, it was just amazing that these cars caused such a sensation. Even the New York Auto Show back in 1935, just a few years before the company died down, they were taking orders of the Cord, and they were promising Christmas delivery. So they were making orders in November and promising a Christmas delivery back then. And they were hoping they could push out 1,000 cars a month. Of course, it didn't happen. You know, everything just kind of crashed, and Cord managed to only sell about 1,100 new cars that first year. But it was an amazing, you know, run right there for this card, and that we see them still being restored here today in Auburn.
Yeah, Elegant was a company here in northeast Indiana, and they built a tremendous number of replicas.
There were a few of them. When you look back on the Cord's history, just like today, you might have a recall on a car. And when I think about the Cord's history, there were some, you know, early problems, like it would vapor lock occasionally. You know, you had a lot of power, a lot of engine, a lot of gas, a lot of heat. Meant that they might vapor lock. They had some slipping out of gear problems occasionally, and they would slip out of gear. But it was amazing. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take a little bit more here from Auburn. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back, and we're going to wrap it up from the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Parade today. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with you in just a second.
Freedom. It's at the core of who we are. The freedom to live without fear, to jog where we please, to wear a hoodie. The freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Hey, we're back here at the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival, and it has just been an amazing event and amazing things happening here in Auburn. You know, if you've never been to the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival, we'd love you to have to come on down. If you're within driving distance, check it out. The Auburns are parked on the street, and the Cords and the Duesenberg, so join us to take a look at them. The Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival is just celebrating these amazing cars. Our festival board, you know, they'd like to praise the heritage that these cars represent in this town's history with modern and present day festivals in the car industry. Without a doubt, the ACD Festival continues to promote, you know, the family. We consider this a car lovers reunion as we continue to push forward on that. The ACD Festival here has such a rich history of these classic cars here in Indiana. You know, Indiana's been in the car business for well over 100 years, especially here in Auburn now. But when you think about this particular festival, Randy, started in 1956. And the idea of preserving history, preserving the car company, and preserving that was it was an amazing thought. And then when the Eckhart brothers, their headquarters in Auburn, when that later became and was sold later to the Cord, who partnered with Duesenberg, but then it finally came back into the hands of the Auburn board, it became our home. And obviously then the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival and the Auburn Cord Museum were born. We'd love for you to make sure that you can get out here and take a look at these amazing Auburn automobiles and what they've got going on. Lots of thanks go out to everybody who made today's parade possible. We held off the rain, Randy. That was awesome.
Yes, we did.
So we're thrilled with that. We can't wait to see you here. Check us out on the Auburn Essential Services website. Without a doubt, we love the fact that we can continue to bring you great programming from your community network and let people take a look inside what's going on in our community. We also think it's just amazing that we can get this type of event up so that you can participate in it later on. More festivities happening. Join us in downtown Auburn tonight. There'll be concerts here on the square. Again, you can see these cars here. You can head out to the auction block. And the auction block, if you're really wanting to part with some of that inheritance you might have or something you're saving for retirement and you want to invest it in a classic car, never a bad idea. Well, Randy, what do you got to tie us up today? You feeling good about the parade today?
Yeah, you know what? It's been many years since I have actually watched the parade. My grandmother Wassler, she had a home down on Jackson Street, on down closer to the museum. Coming up as a kid, sat there in the front lawn and watched the cars come by. But it's been many years since I've actually partaked and watched the parade. But I'll tell you what, gets the fever going again, that's for sure. Of course, I'm kind of a muscle car kind of guy. I got the 65 Fastback Mustang restored, and you've got one also. But you know what? The Boat Tail Speedster is by far my favorite Auburn Cord Duesenberg vehicle.
No doubt about that. Well, hey, thanks for joining us once again in Auburn. We really do appreciate it, and we hope you catch out more of our programming on Auburn Essentials Network and check it out on the VOD player. And we'll be back. Thanks for my partner today, Randy Bice, our engineer legend, and our camera guys today, our interns Joey Hoppert and Chase Miser-Buhite, doing a fantastic job on the parade today to capture those cars. Check it out anytime, and we're so glad you're done. So long for now, and we hope to see you for more programming on the BTV network.
Hi, kids. Having fun?
Hey, we're glad to be with you today for the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival Parade. We're just getting things kicked off today. Going to be a phenomenal afternoon, and we're glad you're joining us from around the world.